And at Villa Park with Sir Jim Ratcliffe watching on, Manchester United managed a 0-0 draw against Villa. Erik ten Hag, though, was positive about the result after the game.
Maybe you can think it's unfair. It's some bringing the criticism, but yeah, in the club we are together. We know the process, where we are going. And we made the decision, ownership, leadership, staff, players, they are all together. And we are in this process and we keep improving this process, and we are convinced we will be successful in the end of this.
Former Newcastle United boss, though, Alan Pardew, was on talkSPORT last night. He had a very different outlook on United's recent trajectory.
You know, the opinions about whether he should stay or go, I'm not interested in, and you know, whether the feeling's there or the feeling's not.
You're a man of stats and facts, Alan. Give me the stats.
The facts are they talk for themselves, right? They're 14th in the table. Their goal difference is -3. They ended last year -2 after 38 games, by the way. They've only scored 5 goals.
But do you know what? These are damning stats. I need you to talk even direct into that microphone and let the nation know, please.
They've only scored 5 goals, which is the same as winless Palace and Southampton, who actually have only scored 4. Ten Hag has overseen Man United's 2 worst starts in Premier League history, right? 23-24, 9 points. 24-25, 8 points. So there are no wins in the last 5, 4 draws, 1 defeat. 1 win in the last 10 European games. No team in the Premier League currently has conceded 2 or more goals as many times as Man United in the last 2 seasons. I found that very hard to believe.
Blimey, he's got more stats than I used to have.
Oh, he's flying about there, wasn't he?
Yeah, now, being reported in the Manchester Evening News today is that Manchester United's hierarchy are meeting in London tomorrow to discuss the future of Erik ten Hag and are potentially lining up Thomas Tuchel as a replacement. Tuchel, of course, of interest to United in the summer as they then contemplated replacing ten Hag. He's still out of work, so he is still available. Joining the show for more on this, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook. Morning, Crookie.
Good morning, Crookie.
Good morning. I'm joining you fresh out of the dentist chair, and that's ironic because watching United's been a bit like pulling teeth this season, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, look, we've heard so many stories, so many rumours. Is there any concrete evidence that this meeting is taking place and that's what they're discussing?
Well, United sources have told me these meetings were pre-planned, so they've not been specifically called to discuss the managerial position, but obviously after making their worst ever start to a Premier League season, Erik ten Hag's job and job security will be up for discussion. But it feels like deja vu, doesn't it? Because as you've already said there, Jeff, Thomas Tuchel was very much someone that was in their minds in the summer. Indeed, he met with the hierarchy. I understand actually Tuchel wasn't particularly keen to take the job at that moment in time, maybe wasn't convinced by recruitment plans. And I guess when you look at the fact that the likes of Matthias de Ligt and Manuel Ugarte were left on the bench yesterday, maybe so far he's been proved right. I know there's also support at boardroom level for Thomas Frank, who's doing such a wonderful job at Brentford, and indeed for Gareth Southgate as well, out of work after leaving England at the end of the Euros in the summer. I guess if you're Erik ten Hag, you would take positives from the fact that at the moment there doesn't seem to be a standout contender. It's not like United have a manager lined up and ready to go if they do decide to pull the trigger. So maybe that 0-0 draw against Aston Villa could lead ten Hag to thinking he'll get a stay of execution. But I do think inevitably at some point he'll be removed from his job. I think the results of the performances simply aren't lending themselves to keeping him for too much longer. But it'll be interesting to see what is debated and whether Thomas Tuchel has a change of heart, whether United can convince him, actually, if they do decide to go down that route, that this is a job for him.
It's Crookie, just a quick one. Is Thomas Tuchel the obvious choice? I mean, there's a little bit of dissent from United fans regarding whether you're going to go for a Gareth Southgate or a Potter.
Well, for me, if I was on the board and making a decision to remove Erik ten Hag, I think Thomas Tuchel is the standout candidate. He's a Champions League winner at Chelsea. I think he has the personality to handle a club the size of Manchester United. I think that's really important. Maybe that's one of ten Hag's weaknesses. But it's not an appointment for the long haul, is it? History tells us that Thomas Tuchel doesn't stay anywhere for very long. But maybe it's fanciful in 2024 to think that a club like United can build a Sir Alex Ferguson dynasty. Maybe this churn of managers is the way forward. But they've got some big decisions to make, and I'll go back to the summer. I think they made a little bit of a mess of it, really, by holding this beauty parade, speaking to the likes of Thomas Tuchel, Roberto De Zerbi as well. I think it undermined Ten Hag in the eyes of the supporters, and more importantly, in a dressing room, which, let's be honest, there's a group of players there who don't need too many excuses to down tools.
Crookie, just a quick one before you go. You said you just come out of the dentist chair there. Was there any truth in the rumour that, in fact, he was installing wisdom teeth into your head?
Cheap shot. And Crookie, there's no time for a response. Even worse. Thank you very much indeed, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Rick, the Manchester United fan, says, if Erik ten Hag has to depart, I'm not sure Thomas Tuchel is right for United. An admirable coach with a fine track record, but rather combustible, like Mourinho and Conte. Sooner or later, it ends in tears. PSG, Chelsea, Bayern Munich. Only a short-term fix. Rick, thank you very much indeed for that point. Costy, very much enjoyed it.
Loved it this morning.
Been brilliant.
And I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for all your contributions as well via text and via telephone. Coming up, Jim White, Simon Jordan and Martin Keown.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.